The cantina on Proxima Station buzzed with the usual mix of voices from a dozen different species. Smoke from exotic substances drifted through the air, creating a hazy atmosphere that made everything look slightly unreal. In the corner booth, hidden in shadows, sat Commander Vexthal of the Zephyrian Defense Corps. His 4 arms rested on the table, each hand wrapped around a different drink. The scars across his blue-scaled face told stories of battles fought across 3-star systems. Vexthal had seen more combat than most beings would in 10 lifetimes. He'd fought the mechanical horrors of the Nexus Collective, survived the poison wars against the Hectorite Empire, and led evacuation missions during the Great Stellar Collapse. But none of those conflicts compared to what he'd witnessed during the Human Contact War. That brief, devastating conflict had changed everything he thought he knew about warfare. A group of young Zephyrian recruits occupied the table next to his. Fresh from the academy, their scales still bright with youth, they spoke loudly about their upcoming assignments. Their voices carried that familiar mixture of excitement and arrogance that all new soldiers possessed. Vexthal tried to ignore them, focusing instead on his drinks and the painful memories they helped suppress. "Did you hear about the new species that just joined the Galactic Alliance?" One of the recruits said, his voice full of enthusiasm. "They call themselves humans. Apparently, they're from some backwater planet called Earth." Vexthal's primary hand tightened around his glass. The liquid inside began to glow brighter, responding to the heat from his suddenly tense grip. He'd hoped never to hear that word again. "Humans," another recruit laughed. "What kind of name is that? Sounds primitive. Where's Earth located anyway?" "Some outer rim system," the first recruit replied. "Third planet from a yellow star. Nothing special about it, really. The planet's mostly water with some land masses. No advanced technology when they were discovered. They only achieved faster-than-light travel about 50 years ago." A third recruit joined the conversation. 50 years? That's nothing. We've had FTL for over 3,000 years. These humans must be practically cavemen compared to us. Vexthal's secondary hand began drumming against the table, a nervous habit he developed after the war. The sound was soft but steady, like the countdown to an explosion. "I heard they want to join our next campaign against the hegemony," the first recruit continued. "Can you imagine? A species that just learned to travel between stars thinks they can help us fight one of the most advanced militaries in the galaxy." "Let them come," the second recruit said with a dismissive wave. "It'll be amusing to watch them try to keep up. Maybe they can carry our equipment or cook our meals." The laughter from their table grew louder, drawing attention from other patrons. Several species represented in the cantina had their own opinions about humans. Most had never encountered them directly, but word traveled fast in the galactic community. The general consensus seemed to be that humans were an insignificant addition to the Alliance, barely worth acknowledging. "I heard their planet has no unified government," a Valdorian merchant said from across the room. "They're split into hundreds of separate nations, constantly fighting each other. How can a species that can't even unite its own world contribute anything meaningful to galactic civilization?" "Typical primitive behavior," agreed a Korathian engineer. "Give them a few centuries, and maybe they'll develop proper society. Until then, they're just another minor species looking for protection from the real powers." Vexthal's drumming grew faster. His tertiary hand reached for his strongest drink, the one he saved for the worst memories. The liquid burned as it went down, but not as much as the memories burned in his mind. The young recruits were getting more animated, their voices carrying clearly through the cantina. "I wonder what they look like," one said. "Probably small and weak, right? I mean, if they evolved on some peaceful water world, they can't be very impressive physically." "I heard they're bipedal," another recruit offered. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. Very simple design. No natural weapons, no armor plating, no enhanced senses. They don't even have proper scales or carapaces for protection. "Sounds pathetic," the third recruit laughed. "What kind of evolutionary pressure creates a species with no natural defenses? They must have been the top predator on their world by default." Vexthal's fourth hand clenched into a fist. These young fools had no idea what they were talking about. They spoke of humans like they were some harmless herbivore species, content to graze in peaceful meadows. The reality was so far from their assumptions that it would have been funny if it wasn't so dangerous. "Mark my words," the first recruit said with drunken confidence. "When we get our first assignment with human forces, we'll have to protect them. They'll probably panic at the first sign of real combat. If they even make it that far," another added. "Have you seen the casualty rates in modern warfare? Species that have been fighting for millennia still lose entire fleets. What chance do these newcomers have?" The conversation continued, each comment more dismissive than the last. Other patrons began joining in, sharing rumors and speculation about human capabilities. The consensus was universal. Humans were a weak species that had gotten lucky enough to achieve space travel. Nothing more. Vexthal finished his strongest drink and immediately poured another. The alcohol wasn't helping anymore. The memories were too strong, too clear. He could see it all again like it was happening right now instead of 15 years ago. The initial intelligence reports on humans had been similar to what these recruits were saying now. A young species, technologically inferior, no major military achievements, divided homeworld. The Zephyrian High Command had assigned them to a minor support role in the planned offensive against hegemony outposts in the Kepler sector. The humans would handle logistics, maybe guard some supply lines. Nothing important. Vexthal had been a captain then, commanding the assault cruiser Stellar Pride. His ship was part of a battle group that included vessels from 6 different Alliance species. 12 ships total, carrying enough firepower to level a small moon. The human contribution to the force was a single ship called the Defiance. When he first saw the human vessel, Vexthal had been underwhelmed. It was smaller than most of the Alliance ships, built with simple, angular lines that spoke of functional rather than aesthetic design. No impressive energy signatures, no obvious weapon systems, no decorative elements that marked it as the product of an advanced civilization. It looked like exactly what everyone expected from a primitive species: basic, crude, and probably ineffective. The human crew that came aboard for the pre-mission briefing matched the ship's unimpressive appearance. They were indeed bipedal, with the simple body plan the recruits had described. No natural armor, no visible weapons, no enhanced senses that Vexthal could detect. Their leader, a female who introduced herself as Captain Sarah Chun, stood barely as tall as Vexthal's chest. During the briefing, the humans had been quiet, asking few questions and offering no suggestions. They accepted their assignment to guard the supply convoy without complaint or enthusiasm. Captain Chin's only comment was a simple, "Understood, we'll do our job," when given their orders. Most of the Alliance commanders had ignored the humans after that initial meeting. They were a non-factor in the upcoming battle, present only because political considerations required their inclusion. The Real planning was done among the established military powers, species that had proven themselves in countless conflicts. Vexthal remembered feeling slightly sorry for the humans. They seemed eager to help, but clearly didn't understand the realities of modern warfare. Their primitive technology would probably fail them at the worst possible moment, and their inexperience would make them a liability. The best-case scenario was that they would stay out of the way and let the real warriors handle the fighting. The mission had begun exactly as planned. The Alliance battle group moved through hyperspace toward their target, a heavily fortified hegemony stronghold that controlled 3 star systems. Intelligence suggested the base was defended by a standard garrison, perhaps 2 or 3 warships, and some automated defense platforms. Nothing the Alliance force couldn't handle easily. The humans followed at a safe distance with the supply convoy, their single ship barely registering on the battle group sensors. Vexthal had almost forgotten they were there by the time the fleet reached the target system. The first sign that something was wrong came when they dropped out of hyperspace. Instead of the expected light defenses, the Alliance fleet found itself facing a hegemony battle squadron. 8 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought, all powered up and ready for combat. Someone had leaked the mission details. The battle began immediately, with no time for tactical adjustments or careful planning. The hegemony ships opened fire the moment the Alliance vessels appeared, their weapons already trained on the exit points from hyperspace. 3 Alliance ships were destroyed in the first volley, their shields overwhelmed by concentrated firepower. Vexthal's ship shook under enemy fire as he tried to rally the remaining vessels. The Stellar Pride's weapons fired back, scoring hits on hegemony shields, but the enemy had superior numbers and position. The Alliance force was being systematically destroyed. All ships, retreat to hyperspace. Vexthal ordered over the communication network. We need to regroup and call for reinforcements. But the hegemony had planned for that too. Gravity well generators came online, preventing any ship from entering hyperspace. The Alliance force was trapped, surrounded by superior firepower with no escape route available. One by one, the Alliance ships fell. The Carathian destroyer Swift Wind exploded when its reactor was breached. The Valdorian cruiser Market Princess lost all power and began drifting helplessly. The massive Thraxian battleship Iron Mountain fought bravely, but was overwhelmed by 3 enemy vessels working together. Vexthal's own ship was taking heavy damage, its shields failing and hull breaches appearing across multiple decks. His crew worked frantically to keep the Stellar Pride fighting, but they were losing the battle for survival. In another few minutes, they would join the growing graveyard of Alliance vessels floating dead in space. That was when the Defiance arrived. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the hegemony formation, having somehow navigated around the gravity wells that trapped everyone else. It was still alone, still unimpressive, but something had changed. Energy signatures that had been barely detectable before now blazed across sensors as the human vessel powered up systems that had been completely hidden. "This is Captain Chun to all Alliance vessels," came the calm voice over the communication channel. "We're going to punch a hole in their formation. Be ready to move when we do." Vexthal had wanted to ask how a single human ship planned to accomplish what 8 Alliance vessels had failed to do, but there was no time. The Defiance was already moving, accelerating toward the enemy formation at speeds that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. The first sign of what humans were truly capable of came when the Defiance opened fire. What had appeared to be a lightly armed support vessel suddenly revealed weapons that defied everything Vexthal knew about military technology. Streams of projectiles flew from hidden railguns, each slug moving at a significant percentage of light speed. The kinetic impact alone was devastating, but these weren't ordinary projectiles. The first hegemony cruiser to be hit simply vanished. One moment, it was there, firing its plasma cannons at Alliance survivors, and the next there was nothing but an expanding cloud of metallic debris. The human weapon had punched straight through the enemy's shields, armor, and hull as if they didn't exist. "Impossible," whispered Vexthal's weapons officer. "No kinetic weapon should be able to penetrate hegemony shielding. Their deflector arrays can stop anything moving at sublight speeds." But the Defiance wasn't finished. The human ship rolled smoothly and fired again, this time targeting 2 enemy vessels simultaneously. The projectiles split in mid-flight, each one dividing into multiple warheads that struck different sections of their targets. The second hegemony cruiser lost its entire forward section, while the third began venting atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. The enemy formation, which had been methodically destroying Alliance ships just moments before, suddenly found itself under attack from an opponent they couldn't understand. The remaining hegemony vessels turned to engage the human ship, their massive plasma cannons tracking the small, fast-moving target. "They're concentrating fire on the humans," Vexthal's tactical officer reported. 5 ships focusing all weapons on a single target. The Defiance can't possibly survive that much firepower. The plasma bolts converged on the human ship's position, enough energy to vaporize a small asteroid. But the Defiance wasn't where the targeting computers thought it should be. The human vessel moved through space with impossible precision, sliding between energy beams by margins so small they seemed accidental. Every shot missed by mere meters. How are they doing that? Vexthal demanded. Their ship isn't fast enough for evasion patterns like that. His navigation officer stared at her instruments in confusion. Sir, according to my sensors, they're not just avoiding the enemy fire. They're predicting it. They start their evasive maneuvers before the hegemony ships even fire. That should have been impossible. Combat prediction required massive computational power and detailed knowledge of enemy weapon systems. No ship's computer could calculate firing solutions fast enough to predict plasma cannon discharge patterns in real-time combat. Yet somehow the humans were doing exactly that. The Defiance continued its impossible dance through enemy fire while simultaneously launching attacks that grew more sophisticated with each exchange. The human weapons adapted to hegemony defenses faster than should have been possible. When shields proved effective against kinetic weapons, the humans switched to energy beams that cut through armor like it was made of paper. When the enemy began jamming targeting systems, human missiles started flying erratic flight paths that no electronic countermeasure could predict. Captain, his communications officer called out, I'm picking up transmissions from the human ship. They're talking to each other. Vexthal frowned. Of course they're talking to each other. All crews communicate during combat. No, sir, you don't understand. They're not giving orders or reporting status. They're having conversations. Multiple conversations, all at the same time, at speeds I can barely register. It's like their entire crew is thinking as one mind. The realization hit Vexthal like a physical blow. The humans weren't just using advanced technology. They were demonstrating intelligence capabilities that no other known species possessed. Their crew wasn't working as individuals following orders from a single commander. They were operating as a collective consciousness, sharing information and making decisions faster than any traditional command structure could manage. The fourth hegemony cruiser fell to a weapon Vexthal had never seen before. The human ship fired what appeared to be a simple energy beam, but when it struck the enemy vessel, the target began tearing itself apart from the inside. Hull plates separated, support structures collapsed, and the ship literally disintegrated as if every molecular bond in its structure had been severed simultaneously. What kind of weapon does that? His science officer asked in horror. No one had an answer. The humans were fighting with technology that was so far beyond anything in the Alliance database that it might as well have been magic. Yet this same species had been dismissed as primitives just hours earlier. The remaining hegemony ships tried to retreat, but the Defiance wouldn't let them escape. The human vessel moved to block their withdrawal, and Vexthal saw something that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The small human ship somehow projected an energy field that trapped the much larger enemy vessels in place. Ships that massed 10 times more than the Defiance found themselves unable to move, held by forces they couldn't understand or overcome. "This is Captain Chun," came the calm human voice over the communication channel. "All Alliance ships. Are you able to assist in securing prisoners?" Prisoners? Vexthal looked at his tactical display in amazement. The entire hegemony battle squadron had been neutralized. 8 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought, the most powerful military force in this sector, had been defeated by a single human ship. Not destroyed entirely, but disabled and captured. It was the most impressive display of military capability Vexthal had ever witnessed. The aftermath was even more revealing than the battle itself. Human boarding parties transferred to the captured hegemony ships with an efficiency that spoke of extensive combat experience. They moved through enemy vessels like they had blueprints of every corridor, disabling resistance and securing critical systems without apparent effort. When Vexthal finally met Captain Chun face to face after the battle, he found himself looking at the human commander with entirely new eyes. She was still small by his standards, still appeared physically unremarkable, but there was something in her expression that he recognized. It was the look of a predator that had been hunting for so long that killing had become as natural as breathing.